Okay, so good evening and welcome to General Council of October 11th. I'll first begin by identifying any media on the line.
Hi, Donna from the Turo Times.
Hi, Donna, as well as acknowledging Bree in the chat from the Turtle Island News. Thank you, ladies. That leads us into our next item, which is any changes, additions, or deletions to the agenda. Okay, seeing or hearing none, then I'll look to a mover and seconder to adopt the General Council agenda of October 11th, moved by Audrey.
I have my hand up, Mark.
Oh, sorry, Hazel.
Yeah, I don't know whether to add or to ask just right now about when will the device that's necessary for us to return to council chambers, how soon is that going to happen? Is it still quite a ways away?
So we're actually still maintaining our current devices. I think what you're referring to is to the program of Teams, which our administration is looking further into. I think that was brought up by Councillor Nathan in terms of kind of capitalizing more on Teams. So our computer services is looking through that now. That shouldn't take too much longer, but in terms of devices, we're still maintaining either our laptops, our iPads, or tech services will be completing the full room, hopefully within the next 2 weeks.
So what I'm talking about, Mark, is when I went to the meeting in the council chambers, it was very difficult to hear with that feedback that happens.
Right.
So what I understood was that there's supposed to be some kind of a device coming. So what is that device called? I don't even know the terminology for it.
Okay, so that's actually just for the cameras in the room, so that we don't actually have to utilize any of our devices, so that we'll all be able to hear, and then the meetings will just be live streamed. Those aren't complete yet. Those are the devices that we're
Mark,
talking.
Yeah,
Oops,
Mark.
Sorry, Melba.
I wanted to say a few words about that. The last meeting, I could not hear anyone that was on the other side of the room. The sound was so bad. I could hear, Sherry Lynn next to me and Michelle, but other than that, it was really bad. And I'm wondering, how does that sound go out to the community? Are they having difficulty too, or not?
Nope. So in fact, that's why we have our comms person here that's live streaming right in the room, so that they'll be able to have no issues hearing. It was basically on the fact of that we have to get our cameras working into the actual chambers, so that will eliminate all of that, which is not complete yet.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. I do apologize again. We are working our way through our technical difficulties. So in the meantime, for those who are able to join in the chambers are more than welcome to. Okay, it's been moved to adopt the agenda. Is there a seconder? Second by Greg. Are there any further questions or comments? Okay, seeing or hearing none then, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. We do have 3 delegations this evening. The first delegation that we have on our agendas, and we may have to make some movements around. Oh, I do actually see them, I believe. Joe Squire, which the provincial women's softball, the players who attended Saskatchewan in late August, wanted to thank our council for their contributions. So wondering if any of those ladies are on the line. I believe I did see. Let me just flip through here. Oh, there they are. Yes, Tess and Kara. Okay, good evening, ladies. I'll pass the floor right over to yourself. First of all, also congratulations to each of you.
Thank you.
How was it? What was the experience like?
Okay. I'm gonna go. You go. It's hard to believe that we still finished third of like all Canada. It's like, honestly, we're like 2 months past it, and it's like still not clicking in that like it's actually a big deal. So like, yeah, it's pretty cool, I guess. That's what I say.
Amazing.
Yeah.
That's fantastic. So is there anything you'd like to add as well, Tess?
No, I think she said it all.
A lady of few words. But a tremendous athlete. Well, again, we just want to say congratulations to each of you. You're now, you have been role models in our community, and we're looking to continue, that role modeling throughout the rest of our young people and our athletes. So really huge applause. I know I see Councillor Wright would like to speak as well.
Thanks, Chief, and thanks, ladies, for representing us. I was recently in Saskatchewan, and 2 chiefs, when they found out I was from 6 Nations, made the point to come out and congratulate me for your conduct out there. Not only were you superb baseball players and represented our community well, but they also wanted to note that you guys were great ambassadors for First Nations across the country. So just wanted to pass those words. When I do my travels, I do talk to a few chiefs, and they made a note to, I didn't ask them, they came to me and made a point to say that. So congratulations.
Thank you.
That's quite amazing. Thank you so much for that, Councillor Nathan. Is there any other further comments, questions? Yeah, third place. Greg.
Is he talking?
How's that? Can you hear me now?
Oh,
Nope.
sorry, he's having a little bit of technical difficulties. I'll come back to you, Greg. Audrey.
I just wanted to say congratulations to the team and to the ladies for coming out here and for representing us, and we're very proud of you. Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Nope.
I think Councillor Greg would like to say something if you want to join over here, Councillor.
Well, hi, ladies. Congratulations. Did
Thank
you win
you.
medals? Okay, that's what I wanted to say.
Oh, wow.
Nice. Very nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Amazing. Well, again, as the comments are coming in, we want to wish you all the best. The best is yet to come, to be honest. Your experience there, you're going to have many more experiences. So wish you all the best on your journey, and continue just to be a role model, because we have a lot of young people that are looking up, especially to our athletes. So again, congratulations on behalf of all of us here at Council, and want to look to a mover in seconder just to accept the presentation. Moved by Michelle, seconded by Sherry Lynn. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Thank you again, ladies, for joining us this evening. Keep up the
Thank you.
great work. Keep those medals shiny.
Yeah.
Take care. Okay, Council, our next delegation is Claudine Veneri Albert, which is the from Grand Erie District School Board, the Annual Education Services Agreement Report, formerly known as the Tuition Agreement. So with that being said, I'll introduce Claudine and pass the floor right over to yourself, Claudine.
Okay, Nyawa. I have with me tonight some of our stars. Joanna Roberto, who's the Director of Education, who I think you all know, and Kevin Graham. Can we see your face, Kevin? Who has the Indigenous portfolio. He's a Superintendent of Education at Grand Erie. And Robin Stotts, who you all know, who is the has the principal leader portfolio. And so at this time, I will turn it over to Joanna with a few words.
Thank you. Can you hear me before I begin? Oh, wonderful. That makes me feel good. So first of all, Sego, and thank you for having us. This is a great pleasure and honor to be here with all of you and to celebrate and share the many accomplishments of the students and the growth that has been made here in Grand Erie. It's if I can take you back to last January, for those of you who were in this meeting with us, we made a commitment that we wanted to be here in the fall. And we felt that it was important to begin the year by highlighting the progress and the gains and the accomplishments made in its previous year sooner rather than later. And so the team has worked diligently to ensure that our presentation and our report and our results that we bring to you today actually highlight those gains, and they do so in a timely fashion. And that meaning that it's the beginning of the year as we close off our annual learning and operating plan goals and our strategic plan goals to see where we are, and then intentionally moving that forward into the new school year. So this evening, as Trustee Van Every-Albert took the opportunity to introduce everyone, I also wanted to also share that our chair of the board, Susan Gibson, is with us as well. And I want to recognize the tremendous accomplishments of this leadership team, Kevin Graham, Robin Stotts, and Jeannie Martins, who is not here with us this evening, and additional staff in the Indigenous team that Robin will talk a little bit about later on in our presentation. And most importantly, I want to take this opportunity to recognize Claudine, who's been pivotal in all of our work, instrumental in not only helping us to understand and learn and connect, but also really to keep us focused on our work, and to ensure that we are able to come here to celebrate that with you as a community and to get your advice moving forward. I also want to recognize Audrey. Audrey, you have been really a staple in all of our work. You've been alongside us for many, many years. And I hope that this evening does prove to show that we are making some significant gains. And again, we thank you too for all of your support. Thank you, Chief Hill, for having us this evening.
So good evening, everyone. I'm hopeful that you can see shared screen. Okay, wonderful. Thank you. I don't always use Zoom, and I would hate to start talking if you can't see what I'm talking about. So good evening, everyone. Thank you, Joanna, for the introductions. For those of you who want to put a name to a face, I'm Kevin Graham, Superintendent of Education with Grand Erie District School Board. Very, very honored to work and learn alongside the Indigenous education team here in Grand Erie. And what I wanted to start with today for all of you is just to give you a high-level overview of what you're about to see. And then between myself and Robin Stotts, we'll just go back and forth between a couple of the key pieces that we wanted to highlight with all of you in terms of some of the success and the opportunities of learning for students from Six Nations within Grand Erie District School Board last year. So the overview of this presentation, of course, is the 21-22 school year. So that would have been everything from last September until this previous June, or this past June for 21-22. It is a summary of activities and initiatives. What I'd like to also be able to share with you is our credit achievement data, and a little bit of a spoiler alert, an increase that we saw from last year, which is always great news and definitely an indicator of some of the great work that's happening across Grand Erie District School Board. to support students from Six Nations, as well drawing a connection to our multi-year strategic plan that supports Indigenous students progressing towards graduation. And Robin will speak momentarily about that. And then taking a look at some of the additions or revisions that we'll see for this current school year. So with that, I'll give you a little piece here, just as I mentioned already, from an executive summary perspective. So of course, this is highlighting the work of the 21-22 school year, specifically related to the progress of students and the team that's coming out of the Education Service Agreement with Six Nations and with Indigenous Services Canada. So giving you a little bit of that overview and that highlight, knowing that in front of all of you is the actual document that contains some more detailed information. Okay, and at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Robin.
Nego Scano, just go good Youngets. Great to be here, feeling wonderful to be a part of the Grand Erie team. I just wanted to share with you some of the most recent initiatives going on within Grand Erie. One of the things we're really progressing towards is monitoring student progress throughout the year. So there will be times throughout the year where our team of 17 individuals will be providing and reaching out. So I think what's important to note is that not only do we have those individuals that support the Education Service Agreement, but we now have 17 individuals across the board, which includes a number of individuals, and we are still looking at hiring a couple of more. Those include things such as cultural mentors, grad coaches, child and youth workers at the early elementary level, and lots of supports across the board. So we love the fact that our team is growing, and we look forward to the year ahead. So it's wonderful to be here. And I'll pass it back to Kevin. So with the transition activities, some of the things that are really important to note is they're starting back to the level of grade 7. So one of the things led by Jeannie Martin and our Six Nations Native advisor, lots of the activities in this past 2021 school year were surrounded by COVID. So a lot of the activities that were provided were in the form of videos that were compiled by the Grand Erie schools where Six Nations students attend, and videos were provided to schools and shared with them. Other transition activities that are provided to students are supports with registration, any type of special programming that takes place, and lots of parent engagement activities where parents are invited out to see the schools with their students. An example of that was Shadow Day. Other transition supports that are provided to the schools are the individual placement review committee meetings, where parents and students are invited to look at the best fit for students within the Grand Erie program. One of the things as well as a part of transition activity is looking at any self-contained classrooms, what are the needs of students entering into Grand Erie, and making sure that their fit within the Grand Erie programs are suited to them. So when we're talking about our multi-year strategic plan, we're looking at a number of initiatives, and I think it's really important to know many of you saw this strategic plan in the past. It began last year, but we just wanted to share with you today some of the initiatives that have gone on across the board in relation to reconciliation. Grand Erie is really providing supports across the board, and truth and reconciliation and the calls to action are a number of the events and things that are going on within Grand Erie. So Kevin's just going to click onto the link there. We just made a small PowerPoint for you just to share some of the things that are going on across the board. And I think you're at the end, Kevin, just maybe coming back to the beginning. We did do a practice run. So just wanted to share with you a number of the activities that are going on across the board within Grand Erie, and our PowerPoint shares that. You may need to do it manually. So a number of these first pictures are a part of our Orange Shirt Day and Reconciliation Week that took place across the board. A number of students took part, especially within the high schools. McKinnon Park here. Some learning from the land, taking care of the lands across the board. River Heights. Learning from the land initiatives at the CBLC. Some writings from students. Again, across the board. Many of the schools within the district, over the next couple of pictures you'll see, were involved in a number of activities. They weren't specific just to Orange Shirt Day, but they've been some activities that have gone on across the board and at different times. Grand Erie is a Downey and Wenjack legacy schools where they're involved in activities supported by the Downey and Wenjack Fund. The next couple of slides are sharing a number of activities that have gone on throughout the school year. Water bottles, our Grand Erie District School Board provided water bottles, celebrating their successes across the board. The Indigenous map of Canada in all schools. Rock your mocks. Some treaty awareness. Sarah General visited our literacy program and our early level classrooms, learning from the land initiatives along with computers. Ribbon skirt making with the youth group. A parent engagement activity. The mush hole performance was visited. Corn husk dolls across the board. Missing and murdered Indigenous women observed in many of the schools. The Creators Game workshops offered as well on a first come, first served basis. Guyana Say visits with our cultural mentors. And apple tree planting with the Survivor Secretariat. And lastly, We Are the Waters, celebrating Indigenous Peoples Days, which was visited by all of Grand Erie schools who were wanting to participate. So I'm going to come back to our PowerPoint. I think I'm on the next slide as well. A couple of annual events that are celebrated and observed within Grand Erie. These can be found on our board website, just to give you an idea of some of those activities. And on to the next one. And I'm going to pass it back over to Kevin.
Definitely. Thank you very much. And thank you, Robin, for that overview. That was really, really nice to see. And I don't necessarily want to put Claudine on the spot, but on page 5 in the Education Service Agreement report is a great message that Claudine had provided on behalf of the work happening across Grand Erie District School Board. And we were able to pull out a couple quotes here, but Claudine, I wasn't sure if you wanted to speak to anything at this point in time, not to put you on the spot, because I do think that these quotes definitely serve to capture your voice around some of the work that's happened across Grand Erie. But if you did want to mention something else, I can pause for any comments.
I just want to say that it pleases me as an educator and a mother and a grandmother, that things are really happening in Grand Erie. Many years ago, when I first started at Grand Erie, we had like 2 staff members, and now we're heading on to 20. And these are people who work with Six Nations kids and kids from other First Nation kids and Métis kids and so on. And things are really happening. So I'm pleased with that. So that's all I'll say for now.
Thank you, Claudine. And to follow up that wonderful statement, I'm now going to bring some data for all of you. Data is always enjoyable, but actually this is the exciting piece about some of the work that's happening, the hard work students are doing within schools across Grand Erie District School Board. And what I want to start with first is it's always nice to see where are the students attending and what's that dispersion across Grand Erie District School Board. And so Grand Erie District School Board has majority of Six Nations students attending McKinnon Park with 200 students, exactly 200 students, with Hagersville coming in almost half of that. One point to note is that statistically, when we see a value, as you can see towards the bottom of that screen there, when it says that -6, all that's depicting is that the data sets are too low to represent. And if we were to show that, that could be indicative of specific students. And we definitely don't want to highlight specific students, as this is just an aggregate or summary of data across the entire district. So from here, we can see the majority of students do attend McKinnon Park, also through Hagersville, BCI, Tollgate, Pauline Johnson, and then of course through North Park, Gila, and Waterford. Now this next screen we're very excited about because of the increase that we've been seeing in our credit accumulation across the district. And so what this graph, or these several graphs, are showing you is credit accumulation by grade and year. What this is saying, so the blue line is talking about the number of grade 9, or the percentage of grade 9 students that are achieving 8 credits of 8. So every student takes 8 credits every year. And so what this graph is telling us is that 47% of the grade 9 students achieved all 8 credits. And you can see that's an increase of 16% from the previous year, and is coming right back in line with some of the achievements seen prior to COVID. And as we've already spoken about, is some of the work that's happening across the district with the increased staff, student success initiatives. We know that these values will continue to go up as those supports are in place. Grade 10 depicts the number of students that have achieved the percentage of students that have achieved 16 credits out of 16. Grade 11, those number of students, or percentage of students, have achieved 22 of 22 credits. And grade 12 is 30 of 30 credits. So definitely coming back up as a result of what we were seeing coming through COVID, re-engaging those students back into learning. And then of course, all of those supports that we've been able to provide across the district is definitely paying off in our credit accumulation data that we've been seeing. We also know that as students navigate their high school career, many students do come back for a 5th year. And so sometimes we like to show data when it comes to a 4-year progression, as is the case with the data that you see right now. Sometimes it's a 5-year progression. So now those percentages start to increase a little bit more because those students have another year to be able to move towards an Ontario secondary school diploma. So what that's depicting now is, and this is just text-based, but grade 9 students, 63% of grade 9 students are on track to graduate within the 5 years. 40% of grade 10 students, 62% of our grade 11 students, and now close to 65% of grade 12 students. And we're seeing an increase now coming in as a result of all the different supports that we have just recently talked about. I'm seeing hands up. Did you want me to pause right now for those specific questions, or did we want to hold until the end?
Excuse me, Kevin, sorry, it's totally up to you. I do see as well Councillor Hazel has her hand up. It's most likely for this slide, so maybe we can go to Hazel.
Yes, I just want to ask the question in regards to these percentages. would those not increase if Assumption College students were involved in those, like in the calculations? Because I do believe there's quite a few Native students who attend there as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. When we take a look at our data, that is our data just within Grand Erie District School Board, because that's our education service agreement is just with Grand Erie District School Board and does not include students from Brant, Haldeman, Norfolk Catholic District School Board. So unfortunately, I can't really answer that question because we don't have access to their data.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no problem. Good question, though. And so I'll just move on to the next slide because I think what's also. Yes,
I have a question.
of course.
Not so much a question, but on the previous slide, where the majority, like 200 students are going to McKinnon Park. I think my question is, why do we know why so many students want to go to McKinnon Park? I think that's a good question we need to ask, because it seems to me the Bradford schools could probably learn something from McKinnon Park if we knew what it was that attracts the students. So Bradford schools might be able to learn lessons and find out why kids don't want to go to their schools. Not as many.
I really appreciate that question. And actually, you've kind of almost answered it for me a little bit in there too, in terms of addressing that question through the students and asking the students, why are they attending specific schools? And that's actually part of transitions is connecting with kids, students, finding out what are your interests? Why are you attending the schools that you are attending? And we may come up with different answers, such as it's closer to my home. They have programming that suits my needs. Sometimes the answer is my friends go there, or my family already attends there. So sometimes that's inherent as to some of the reasons why students attend a specific school. But as you had suggested, the students sometimes will tell us why they're attending a specific school. And at this point in time, obviously we see more students attending McKinnon Park. But again, to your point, there could be some lessons or some answers in there that could support students attending other schools across the district.
Well, I just as an added concern, we see Caledonia building housing developments all the time. And we know that brings more and more people to Caledonia. So I remember a few years back, there was a big concern about the number of people going to McKinnon Park. And there was issues where they might not want to take Six Nations children, but that got resolved for a bit. But I see them building more and more houses today, and I just wonder if that's going to have an impact on Six Nations students because we have so many going there.
Yeah. Well, at this point in time, there's no change to where students can attend. If they'd like to continue to attend McKinnon Park, then they can continue to attend McKinnon Park. And yes, you are right. There's a lot of housing going up in that area. But as a school board, we're ensuring that students can attend the school that they would like to.
Okay. Thanks for that, Kevin. I do see a couple of hands raised as well. Claudine, then over to Audrey.
Thank you. Just in response to Councillor Helen's question, I think if we look at a long-term understanding of where students are going, I think you'll find for a while they were all at BCI, and then for another while they were all at PJ, and for another while they were all at Hagersville, and so on. And I think that, following from what Kevin is saying, that two things: they want the program that they want, but they also want to go where their friends are. And so I think that over time we'll see this change a little bit. And Helen was right. Many years ago, students from Six Nations were not allowed to go to McKinnon Park. That went on for about 2 or 3 years in the early 2000s, but that got changed. That's it.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that, Claudine. Audrey.
Yes, can we turn to the credit accumulation slide, please, Kevin?
Definitely.
Okay, on this, it's good to see that there has been an increase since last year with COVID. But the year prior to that, our numbers were higher. As you can see, in grade 9, we had 51% of our kids getting ready in grade 9 to graduate. So now we have 47%. Even though it went down to 31, it still hasn't reached up to 2 years ago. And the same with grade 10, and the same with grade 11. No, it's, yeah, grade 11 as well. And grade 12 is 45% as well as it's 45% now. So it dropped last year and it's back up to where it should be, but the numbers are still low for credit accumulation. It almost puts back to the reason they used to have grade 13. And that seems like what we're doing here is that our kids are taking that 5th year to get their credits, many of them. So I guess that's one thing that we should be looking at as a marker too, for that number to start decreasing so that more kids get their credit accumulation in the 4 years. And that would be our goal. And that's what we would, one of the expectations that I think most parents would want to see. So thank you for all the work you're doing and continue to do the good work. And let's get those scores up a bit more and get the scores lower for the 5th year. Yeah. Well.
Yeah. No, thank you. And thank you for that comment too. I think that's our goal. We're here to ensure that students meet their success, whatever that success looks like. And our continued work is to support students through a lot of those initiatives that we see in our classrooms and across the district. And that's why we're seeing some marked gains and drastic gains, even compared to last year. For many of the students, and not just Indigenous students, all students, it's around knowing what is school and learning about being back in school every single day. And so from the results that we're seeing here, we're really encouraged to see the tremendous growth, even just 1 year, that tremendous growth. And we know that that will continue in an upward trajectory. But thank you very much for your comment. I think that very well taken.
Yeah, Kevin.
Thanks, Kevin. I do have Greg in queue next, who would like to answer a question or comment. Okay. Oh, my apologies. He's going to come join my screen.
Oh, yeah. Hi, Kevin. Yeah, it was a very nice presentation. I just had a question.
Well, we're not done yet. We've got more.
Oh, okay. Just to follow up on what Audrey commented on, just for my understanding, you said there were 65% of the students complete grade 12 in 5 years. Is that correct?
Yes, I'll just move to this screen. Is this the one? Yeah, so towards the end, it's speaking close to 65.4% of grade 12 students achieve their credits. And so therefore they're on track to graduate by their 5th year.
Do you know the percentage of students that complete grade 12 in 4 years?
Well, that I can go back to the previous slide and that'll show us right here that right now 45% students had 30 credits within those 30. So they had done it within the 4 years.
Oh, okay. And how do we compare to the province of Ontario, just generally speaking?
Generally speaking, for a 4-year grad rate, it might actually be better to compare to just Grand Erie District School Board or the provincial, because the provincial grad rates are in the low, and you'll have to help me out, Joanna, if you're on, if you want to pop on, I believe is low 80s, and Grand Erie District School Board is just in the 60s, mid 60s, high 60s.
All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Greg, for your questions as well. I don't see at this point in time any more hands raised, so perhaps I'll pass it back over to you, Kevin, to finish your presentation.
Of course, thank you, and thank you very much for the questions. They've been really great questions so far. I believe this is where I was before. So now what we also wanted just to convey is some other education service agreement undertakings. And I think what we've been seeing is our continued partnership with Six Nations federal schools in terms of focusing on transitions, because we know those transitions are critically important as students are transitioning from grade 8 into grade 9. And Robin already spoke a little bit to that previously around making sure that it's not just grade 8, but going into grade 7 or perhaps even grade 6 in terms of what those transitions could look like. Also speaking to some co-planning and co-teaching. Native languages, and this is our promotion and support that we've been doing around our work with Mohawk and Cayuga, specifically in our schools, and the supports that are required for students to be successful within Grand Area District School Board secondary schools. Culturally integrated curriculum, and that's our support and implementation of learning resources that are there to not only heighten, but take a look at Indigenous history, cultures, and traditions. An example of this is Native Studies courses. So our grade 11 English classes, and this is now a couple years in a row now, we've removed grade 11 English and replaced that with grade 11 contemporary First Nation, Métis, and Inuit voices. So all students, regardless of what school they attend, take that course in grade 11 instead of a grade 11 English class, which definitely supports knowledge of histories, cultures, and traditions across Grand Area District School Board. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Robin.
I just wanted to speak a little bit about our cultural competency training, which is in our second stage right now. These are a number of the participants we've had from both communities, Six Nations and Mississauga of the Credit. And the goal is to provide some competency within all of the Grand Area staff. Phase 1, Kevin mentioned a little bit earlier, was providing some training to our administrators across the board. And right now we're working into phase 2. So phase 2 already started last year with our year-end PD day, or one of our year-end PD days, where our cultural competency presenters presented at that PD day. So it was a full day PD day, and we continued with that learning within our cultural competency. So we have yet to continue with the presenters mentioned here on this screen, and we will continue to provide those type of training sessions to staff. And what that looks like, we are still working away at it, as it is difficult to provide training to an entire district of over 2,800 employees. But keeping in mind that, you know, we are providing people from Six Nations and the other surrounding communities to be a part of these training sessions. And we welcome people such as our Haudenosaunee singers and dancers to be a part of our training. And these individuals on the screen here have been in our schools a few times over the years from Six Nations. So I look forward to the plan ahead and working within Grand Area to continue our cultural competency training. Tanito.
Okay, and I will turn this over to Joanna just to close us out.
Thank you once again for the opportunity this evening to present. I do want to share with you as we continue to work closely with staff and students and to support individual students on their own pathways. We really want to take this opportunity to say that this is an area for us that we will be committed to, continue to be committed to, and we'll also want to take in your advice as we move forward. I think it's an important piece that we're all together and having a combined effort to really support each individual student, and especially where they are at and where we need to take them and how we can do that. So I thank you again for this evening's your time and for this evening's opportunity to share and highlight some of the many things that Grand Area is doing across the district. Thank you.
Okay, that's fantastic. I just really quickly, I do have a question coming in from our FB live stream in relation to McKinnon Park School. The question asks, do they plan to build onto the present building and get rid of the portables? Not sure if anyone is able to shed some light on that.
Sure, through you, Chief Hill, I can let you know that there's always a process for those pieces in particular around enrollment and capacity. However, at this, so it's a bit too early for us to know what it's going to look like in the next 5 to 10 years. But I can share with you the following. If you have had an opportunity, we have placed 2 new portables. They will be up and ready for student use, and they are modular portables. They're quite different than what the typical portables are there, and hopefully that will also not only expand student use and have new classroom experiences. There's an outdoor component to it, and so even when Robin talked about learning from the land and working through some things, there hopefully will be some experiential opportunities with those 2 new additions to the site. But going back to the original question, it's a bit too new at this point, especially how this district has to go through accommodations and enrollments in order to proceed with that.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that response, Joanna. I do have another question, again, coming from our Facebook Live page. It reads, so how come if your child lives on reserve, they can't attend an off-school elementary school through Grand Erie? Again, not sure if that's specifically to each of you, but I know I have done, through the Chief's office, work with Travis Anderson as well as ISK to see those opportunities through. So maybe I've already answered that question. I'm not sure if anybody on Grand Erie side can answer as well, but I know that there is a process for that, and that's usually through Travis Anderson and as well as ISK to see that next step.
Yes, and if I can just add, if you can add to that, just a copy an email to kevin.graham@granderie.ca, and we will definitely connect with the family for sure.
That's perfect. Thank you so much for that as well, Joanna. I do see a couple of hands being raised. I'll first go over to Claudine and then over to Councillor Sherilyn.
Thank you. As we finish up, there's a couple of things I would like to respond to that were mentioned here. One of the things is somebody mentioned Assumption. Apparently there are more than 100 students at Assumption, which is not a part of Grand Erie. And so Six Nations does not get a report about those students. And one of the reasons is there's no education services agreement with that board, and there is no trustee for that board. So there's no information coming back. So there's that. The other thing that I think we all need to consider and all have a look at is attendance, and probably a longitudinal study and attendance to see if, in fact, those students who have not been good attenders over their school experience, if that is reflected also in high school, and if so, what can we do about it? We really need to ensure that students get to school. And so I would call on parents and educators and grandmas and everybody to let's work together and make sure these kids get to school. I think we all know that when you miss a day or two, you lose track of what's going on, and there are gaps in your learning. So I think we need to look at that. Finally, I would like to say that the team at Grand Erie, which is now 17, perhaps a couple of more, led by the three people you have here, Joanna, Kevin, and Robin, and Jeannie, have been doing an all-out job. And you can see that by what's happening in the schools. And it's things are going better than we could have expected. But I think that working together, we can make it even better for the students. So Nyawa Goa to the Grand Erie team and also to the council for your support. Nyawa, Donato.
Thank you. Excuse me, now, Claudine as well. I do see a number of hands being raised. I'll first go over to Sherry Lynn, Audrey, and then over to Hazel. Sherry Lynn, you have the floor.
Yes, I just have a couple questions. I always been hearing on the news and been hearing about this catch-up tutoring program. How is that fitting in to for our kids? Were they able to hear that?
Yep, I heard that. So are you just asking whether or not students from Six Nations can access the tutoring supports?
Yes, how is that? And is that accessible? How does it look for our kids? I just been hearing through the news and stuff. I just haven't been really seeing anything where it's offered, things like that.
Oh, okay, so you're asking for some of the specifics on the tutoring supports? I don't have the specifics, but what I can share with you is that all of the supports that are as a result of the tutoring efforts are applicable for all students. So students from Six Nations, students not from Six Nations. And so therefore all of that is then streamlined through their home school. If we're looking for additional supports, and I'm not sure if that's coming through elected council, we can provide some additional information and just send that to council. And then that could be handed out to everybody here on the call. But that could be a takeaway that we can then provide back if that's what you're looking for.
I guess, well, yeah, I guess what I'm looking for is this catch up, whatever Doug Ford's doing, this program that he's offered, this billions or millions of dollars. That's what I want to know, if our students are aware of where the tutoring is to go, those kinds of things that you guys are offering under your board.
Joanna, I saw that you popped on. Were you answering that one?
Yeah, Sherry, I think it's a great question that you pose, and I'll explain why. When that question comes to us, then that means that we need to make sure that all of our communication channels have been shared. So the program was brought to IAC, was brought to NAC last year. I know it was asked about. The process has been going on since late last spring. And so each of the schools who have been able to have managed to hire tutors, and there's an interest in those schools, those principals have been organizing the tutoring programs. And it could look very different. It could be virtual, it could be face-to-face. And so again, we're doing that as you speak today. We were just talking about ensuring that it gets out to the system once again. So we will make sure that when we do issue that information, that it goes to the proper channels to access. And then again, if you have any specifics, let us know, because we can definitely respond to that tutoring opportunities to students if we haven't been able to reach them in the ways in which we're doing so right now. So it's there, it's available. It's just making sure that we're able to connect and ensure that each of the administrators in those schools have tutors. And like I said, sometimes it might not be at that site, but we can arrange to connect you with tutors in other sites across the district.
Okay, thank you, because I was just wondering how that catch-up program that Doug Ford brought up. The other one, again, I always bring it up when you guys are here, the testing that goes in there for the IEPs, that goes in their OSRs. I always push for this for our kids, is because if it's not in their OSRs when they get to college and university, they're not able to get help. So I don't know how many you test of our kids, because I think it's very crucial, because I've seen even from my own children, that if they did not have that, they would not have made it to, they would have had very difficulties making it through college and through university. So I would hope that there is a push for our children and for the parents who are listening to get their child, if needed, tested. So it's in their OSRs when they go to college and university, so they don't have to struggle. And that's the part there that I didn't, setting our kids up. I didn't want to set my kids up for failure. I wanted them to be tested to know. I knew that they were struggling with comprehension and stuff. And I knew that they needed help when they get to college and university. So those are the things that I hope that we push and stress for our kids to get to college and university, but to have those supports that they need from these tests that are for them to get. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Sherilyn. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. It always goes back and forth, so I do apologize. Thank you, Sherilyn, for your questions and comments. Again, really great comments and questions. I'm going to continue to go down the list here. I have Audrey and Q next, and then over to Hazel.
Yeah, mine is just a statement. We had a parent ask about students having the ability to come to go to school in Grand Erie. It's called a Reciprocal Education Agreement. It works both ways. So if there are students in Grand Erie from Six Nations who want to come to school on Six Nations, they have every right to come here. So that will be accommodated. So just so you know, so if there are parents who work on the reserve and want to bring their kids with them to school, whatever school they want to go to, they can go to. And there's a process for it. Again, work through Travis Anderson, the Director of Education for federal schools. And you'll have to work with the sending school that your child is in Grand Erie, and that's with Joanna and Kevin. So Nyawa, thank you for that question.
Thanks, Audrey, for that. Hazel.
Yes, I just wanted to go back to Claudine's update about the students, say from Gowanio, or not Gowanio, but well, maybe Gowanio too. Assumption. And what I wanted to say was maybe it would be appropriate that a trustee would be available or to hire one. So the schools that are not under Grand Erie would always be considered in the numbers that are presented for Six Nations of the Grand River. Because an example could be, would have funding became available for a high school on reserve. So then you wouldn't have a true figure to present without all the students who go to those schools who are not under the Grand Erie. So I'm just wondering if it's possible to have a trustee appointed to provide you with that information that you don't have. Thank you.
I think I can respond to that, and maybe Joanna would like to jump in. In the Education Act, there are, pardon me? Okay, in the Education Act, there are sections that determine how a First Nation can have a trustee on a district school board. And it really has to do with numbers and or percentage. And so what we have to do is we have to relook at the Education Act again, and also to determine how many students there are in the Catholic board attending Assumption or any of the other Catholic school board schools. So that's going to take a little bit of time, and it would be good if we did have someone there who could provide the information that is required. So maybe Joanna, if you want to jump in further on that.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. Through you, Chief Hill, one of the components that I would advise is Claudine's direction is accurate in terms of what that looks like. I can't speak for the coterminous board in terms of their numbers and their process, but I would definitely maybe suggest that there's an opportunity for you to engage there, because it does end up either within legislation based on the number of students that you have in your district, or school boards can elect or decide to do that working closely with the district. But the legislation, and I'll give this to you for your notes, is the Education Act. It's Regulation 462 97, so /97. And there's a section in there that really talks about the education framework, and it's section 188. And that really talks about the requirements for a board. So the regulation makes the appointment in the discretion of the board if the number of enrolled pupils is fewer than the lesser of the 10% of the average daily enrollment. So it plays directly into the enrollment in your district. And so I would encourage you to unpack that and follow up with the coterminous board, because I don't want to speak for them. And the director would be Mike McDonald. If that helps, but you might want to unpack the legislation first.
Right. Yeah, I was already making some notes to that, because I know we've had this discussion in the past, specifically because we've seen obviously the number of our students choosing to attend Assumption College. So we'll definitely look to explore all those areas that you've listed. So thank you for that. I do just have another question coming in from our Facebook Live, is how does Grand Erie's board accommodate language immersion students going from Six Nations schools to a high school? That's a really important question. And so if I can shed some light on that, that would be great.
That would be great. I'm going to turn that over to Robin. And then Robin, maybe you'd like to also talk about the work that you're also doing in the pilot to support Mohawk language teachers as well. So I'll turn that question over to you, and maybe you can add the most recent pilot that we're part of in the province.
So just so you're aware, right now, the question that was asked was, how do we support those students coming in from the immersion programming? So right now, we have identified a very strong need with the population and the cohort of students coming into Grand Erie, especially our grade 9 and our grade 10 students who, and not just here, in other schools that may have been not face-to-face, such as Grand Erie. So we have noticed there's a great need in the last 2 years in our grade 9 and 10 students coming into the board. So one of the things we're working at is providing supports to those schools with those high number of students. And we've had a number of meetings taking place within those schools, looking at how the education service agreement staff are being used, making sure that the supports are in place for those students. Do the schools have enough literature to support those students so that they feel like there's a belonging within those schools? So we are working together with the principals and teams of people to support those students. We do also have within Grand Erie, Grand Erie is one of the pilot boards who is working with the Ontario College of Teachers to certify first right now Ganyageha speakers, Mohawk language speakers within the province. So Kevin and I attended this fall a program in Tyendinaga, where we were doing the swearing in of individuals to the Ganyatkeha Circle. And that process will begin, and they will be putting a call out soon once the accreditation process has been worked out. Our hope is to invite people from 6 of the boards, the surrounding education boards that are working for this program, to certify speakers within our community through the Ontario College of Teachers, very much like the Red Seal program. So Grand Erie is taking part of the lead in that, meaning we are the financial board who is working on that. And I do sit on the committee with a number of other people from Six Nations who are working towards that. So that's in the works. It is going to take us a little bit of time to complete that program, but we do want to start with Mohawk. And our second attempt will be Cayuga and then in Ojibwe. So Grand Erie is just learning the process right now, but that is our hope, to continue to offer those Indigenous languages within the schools at not just a level 1. We want to move into the level 2, level 3, and possibly level 4, so that those immersion students coming into Grand Erie are feeling like they belong and they can access those Indigenous language programs within the school. But as Six Nations, I know, and being a teacher at Six Nations, we're hurting for language teachers. So anybody knows of language teachers who are looking for, we're constantly trying to recruit within Grand Erie. Anytime we have postings, it's very difficult to get people to jump ship and come work, but we are definitely working on it, and we're hoping to, in the future, a year from now, you know, we might say we've got a whole bunch of new certified teachers, a pool of individuals that we can work from, and hopefully even extend into our urban elementary grades. That is our goal, to be offering some of those, whether they be virtual from one location using our iPads within those schools. Those are all in the plans and in the works, and lots of exploring different ways and thinking outside the box. Okay, does that answer that question?
It does. Thank you. Thank you for that, Robin. Well, again, just want to say I don't see any hands up as of now. So just want to say nyawa to each of you for such an informative evening in presenting your report. I just wanted to make a couple comments. Just I know we were all so pleased to attend the renaming of the Edith Montour School. It was such a beautiful ceremony. So congratulations to each of you for that. I know it was really nice to see a lot of the Montour family out in celebration of Edith and all of her accomplishments. But I think another important piece for me, and I know this is where I've had a conversation with Mr. Bauma's office as well, further to, you know, the teacher who I think it might have been the principal or educator who made a comment of, you know, I've been here growing up in the city of Brantford all of my life, and yet never knew much about Six Nations, which is just, you know, you could throw a rock to Six Nations, how close we are. And so that was something that really stood out to me from that point, in really trying to look at the bigger picture of the curriculum of what's being taught, not just within Grand Erie, but just across the province in terms of, you know, our own stories and from our own perspectives of our history and so forth. And so that's something that I'm continuing to have conversations with at the different levels of government, but want to say a huge nyawa to Grand Erie for all the work that you're doing, because it's very evident, you know, that reconciliation is at top of mind, and it's not just being talked about. That's something that I also kind of had, you know, in my remarks, of really showing the action behind it and what does it look like. And so I can say that your board is really leading in the area of reconciliation, and it shows. And that's something that I think at Six Nations, it's so, you know, we're so appreciative of that we can kind of, you know, move down this journey together and what that looks like for our students and yet to come. So again, just want to say nyawa to each of you for all of the work that you do as well as again, Claudine, I know, who has been there for many, many years, Audrey, who has held the file for many years, an educator, Robin, the list goes on. There's so many people I think that, you know, we need to highlight, but it's really that team effort. And I think that's something that goes a long way when we have to focus in on, you know, educating our children and our students and making sure that they have all the support. I think that's an important piece as you know, to Councillor Sherry Lynn's point of, you know, we need to set them all up for success. And that's something I think that really, you know, hones on the responsibility of each of us, you know, as leadership, as educators, as, you know, parents, guardians, and so forth. It's really that team approach and making sure that, again, all of our students are successful. So really just wanted to say thank you and Yawa to each of you for all of that important work, because again, it's not easy. I can recognize and highlight that, but again, it's work that is needed, and it's a journey that I think we all are going down. I do see Audrey and Joanna's hands raised.
Yeah, I just wanted to say congratulations to Joanna and Kevin and the whole team, Robin, everyone. When we first took this to the Native Advisory Committee that Claudia and I both sit on, we mentioned the fact that there are speakers who, because they don't have an Ontario teaching certificate, were getting paid less money than a certified teacher who was sitting in the room while the speaker was teaching the lessons and getting paid the regular salary for it, which didn't seem fair. And then I heard about this group in Tainanego that we're starting this group to certify speakers. So I commend Joanna for listening to us, for hearing us, and now acting on this. It's so important to have that Native Advisory Committee there because it does move and help move this along, and it forms this team. It's very respectful, it's back and forth, and we get along very well, but we also are all there for all of the kids, especially our kids who need the language and culture with them to support who they are as Haudenosaunee and Ongwe. So now again.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Now, Audrey, Joanna.
Yes. Thank you again. First of all, yeah, I want to recognize both of you who are in this space this evening. I think it was I can't see his camera anymore, or maybe I can on the second screen, who came to the opening of Edith Montour. It was a significant moment for us in Grand Erie. And it was an incredible teaching experience and learning experience. First of all, to honor and recognize a family. To be able to look into an audience and see baby Edith Montour, who is in the Edith Montour catchment area. We hope that one day she will come to the school in honor of her grandma. But it was also a learning experience. And what I mean by that, it was all staff across the district, Robin and the team, and the principal, Diana Dean, really ensured that student voice was part of the learning process. And so if you ever have an opportunity to stop by, I also wanted to recognize Raymond Sky for his work in capturing Edith's image and bringing that to life as well. So it was an all-round learning experience for us. And so with that, there are a couple of things I also wanted to highlight tonight, is that we're offering the Indigenous First Nations Métis course to all of our staff. And we offer that year round. So at various points, we connect with S&P, and we also offer it through Lakehead. And we're seeing an incredible number of staff who are wanting to take it. It is an additional course, a qualification course for them. So we're also committed to growing and supporting the staff. And more importantly, it's about the community. And so we need to consistently keep our communications open. Tonight is a great night to highlight our work, but it's so important that we are part at any time, not just for a report, but at any time to come here, to engage in a collaborative conversation with all of you, and to keep that communication open. So I thank you for this evening, but I hope we have other opportunities to have these educational conversations, because we can't do it without you. And if you ever have a question, you see all of us on the screen. Don't ever hesitate to email or call us or work through Audrey or Claudine, because this is what we need to do, and we need to do more of it. So thank you again.
Thank you, Joanna, for that. Really appreciate it. So again, it's been very informative evening, and do agree with Joanna. I know we can have many more conversations on this and do look forward to those. But at this point in time, I will look for an adoption, or rather a motion, to accept the annual Education Services Agreement Report from September 2021 through till June 2022 as information. Is there a mover to that effect? Moved by Audrey, seconder. Second by Nathan. Are there any further questions or comments? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Again, just want to say nyawa to each of you. It's always nice to see each of your face, and look forward to, again, this continued work collaboratively. So thank you.
Thank you.
No, Ona.
Okay, Council, our next delegation we have is a presentation on risks in the development of water management strategies. We have Marcia Serville on the line, who will be joining us. I just want to check to see, I did see her name. I gotta scroll over. Oh, there she is. Hi, good evening, Marcia.
Good evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. Thank you for joining us this evening. I'll pass the floor right over to yourself to begin your presentation.
Okay, so can I share my screen?
Yes, you should have. You should be able to do that.
Okay. Are you able to see it?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you everyone for allowing me to do this presentation, and it's entitled Risk to Sources of Drinking Water. I did this study as part of my PhD study at Trent. So where did it come from? So there was an initial survey of contaminants of emerging concern in drinking water from several communities in Ontario, including 6 nations of the Grand River. So that was done by the Metcalf group before I started school at Trent. And that study, the sampling request was made by the Ontario Ministry of Government, as well as those 5 communities involved in that sampling. And Trent University worked closely with the Public Works Department at 6 nations of the Grand River for this study and other studies. And now I was in attendance as one of the presentations when I just started my studies at Trent, and discussions commenced about the present research that I am going to deliver on tonight, as well as the concern about contaminants potentially coming from an area known as the Fairchild Creek, which is just a tributary along that joins the Grand River. Also, we know that 6 nations of the Grand River is located in a mixed-use watershed, and the Grand River is the source of water for the community, and it's impacted by upstream contamination from urban and agricultural sources. And previous research by researchers at Trent University showed that the old drinking water treatment plant was not that as efficient in removing those contaminants. That was the treatment plant that was there before. And we wanted to see, one of the things is the new drinking water treatment plant doing a better job at removing those contaminants. And we wanted to find out what are the perceptions of risks associated with those with these contamination problems. Is it reducing confidence in the safety of the drinking water? Are there concerns about chemical contaminants? For example, things like pesticides and other contaminants from wastewater and things like that. So we wanted to find out what were the perceptions of risks. So there were two parts to this study. One was a quantitative study where we went out into the field and did sampling and measurements and testing. So what were the questions that I was looking to answer in part one? I wanted to find out whether there were pesticides, caffeine, sucralose, E. coli, and total coliforms, and other markers, or when I say markers of fecal contamination, bacteria that could tell us that there was some sort of fecal contamination present in sources of drinking water, like in the Grand River source of drinking water. I also wanted to find out how much of the contamination upstream was polluting the intake. And I wanted to find out, is the drinking water treatment plant doing a good job at removing those contaminants? So I also wanted to find out if there was a risk to human health from individual pesticides as well as mixtures of pesticides in sources of water, and whether we're able to use caffeine, which is found in your coffees, and sucralose, which is an artificial sweetener, as whether we were able to use chemicals as this to indicate reliably that there was some contamination from wastewater. And when I say wastewater, it's the water that comes down our sinks, the water we flush, everything that ends up being dumped eventually into the water sources. So how was I looking, or how were we looking to answer these questions? I used two different types of sampling. The first one was a grab sample, as it suggests, and the picture shows you have a bottle, you collect some water in it, and then you test that water. But what that does, it provided us with a snapshot, just a single point in time indication of what contaminants were present. And for chemical contaminants, I used the second one that you could see towards the right of your screen. It's a passive sampling method, and it's called the POSIS, Polar Organic Chemical Integrated Sampler, where it doesn't require the collection of water. We deployed them or left them in the water for 14 days. And what it does, it's the contaminants that are present in the water collect in there. So we have a better idea of what is happening over time. And where were the sampling points? So we had one upstream, S1 is upstream the Grand River. S2, just where the Fairchild Creek is leading into the Grand River. S3 is just a little lower where that Fairchild Creek joins the Grand River. S4 is just near the drinking water intake, and S5, S6 at various points in the treatment plant. What contaminants were we looking at? So we were looking for pesticides. Pesticides would indicate that contamination is coming from agricultural sources mostly. We're looking at sucralose, the artificial sweetener, and it indicates the presence of domestic wastewater, so wastewater coming from the households upstream. Caffeine as well also was used as an indicator of the presence of wastewater coming from households as well. We tested, or we looked for total coliform, which means that there's some sort of fecal contamination present. It may be from wastewater from domestic sources, or it may be from animals. We looked at that. We looked for E. coli as well. Again, it indicates the presence of fecal contamination, maybe from animals, maybe from humans upstream. And then we had this bacteroideals, which is a genetic marker that we use to determine the source of that bacteria. So by using bacteroideals, we were able to tell what the source of that bacteria was, whether it's from humans, whether it's from cows, etc. So what did we find? If we look here, and I put the map on the side so you can see S1, the Grand River upstream, S2, Fairchild Creek, S3, S4, S5, S6. You would notice that upstream, at all the places upstream before being treated, there's a lot of pesticides in the Grand River upstream, the drinking water intake. And we noticed that the drinking water treatment plant was doing a really good job in removing those chemicals from the water. And that I found was happening after the water had gone through bacterial activated carbon filtration and UV treatment. And not all drinking water treatment plants are fitted with those types of technology, but they were actually doing a good job in removing those contaminants that were coming from upstream. Yes, and if we look at the next set of pesticides that I found, and these are just the fancy names for them, but they're fungicides and herbicides. And again, if you look at what we're finding upstream, and when you get to the treatment plant, it was reducing it at such low levels that sometimes we couldn't even detect anything at all. So, and we were looking at units that are pretty small, like one little drop in a big drum, a big tank of water or something like that. So you find that there are substantial or a lot of fungicides and herbicides upstream in the Grand River. And again, we were finding that these fungicides and herbicides were efficiently or significantly removed following the bacterial activated carbon filtration and UV treatment. Yes, so at the intake, that's before it has been treated, those pesticide levels are really high, but as it goes through the treatment process, you find that, like I said, it gets much lower, significantly. So I used that data that I was getting from how much or the concentration of pesticides that I found in the water, and I wanted to see what was the impact that it was having on human health. So in other words, what were the human health risks associated with those trace amounts that we were finding? And how did I calculate, or how did we calculate the health risks? The following things were considered. I looked at the concentration or the amount of the contaminant that I was finding, the amount of water consumed from the drinking water treatment plant per day. And there's a factor that's something that's given to it, like a fixed factor, a relative absorption factor from the gastrointestinal tract. So it's a fixed number. The days per week that someone would be consuming the water, I guess 7 days, the body weight, and the weeks per year that that person would become consuming that water. And I just wanted to say that in those calculations, I based it on a vulnerable group, which was children. Children are usually more at risk from contaminants. So I based those calculations on that group. And here were the results. What did we find? Individually, based on the amount of pesticides, the compounds were not expected to pose a health risk. And as a mixture, based on the amount, when I looked at them alone, each pesticide alone, they were not expected to pose a health risk. But when I looked at all the different pesticides together, they were also not expected to pose a health risk based on those calculations. Now, I want to have a note here that at any one point in time, these are not the only things that are present in water, but we did not have the capacity nor the time, or we're not able to measure everything that was present in water. Of course, you know, that is virtually impossible. So We also looked at caffeine and sucralose, like I mentioned earlier, because caffeine and sucralose, usually we drink these things, we consume them, and then we excrete them, and they get into wastewater and get thrown into our waterways. Now, anytime caffeine and sucralose is present, usually it's an indicator of wastewater. And again, contaminants, these contaminants, you usually find them in high levels upstream, but when they go through bacterial activated carbon filtration and UV treatment, they are removed significantly. And the same I found for things like total coliforms and E. coli, and they're in red. So they're present at high levels before the water is treated. And especially I was finding at the Fairchild Creek, we were finding some high levels up here. But when they get to the treatment plant, the treatment plant was getting rid of them completely. So we look at those in red again. Now, these are the genetic markers. So I said that we looked at bacteroidales and we were able to track those back to humans. We were able to track those back to cows or bovine, and we had general markers because we did not have markers for other specific sources like birds or, other animals. And we were finding, if you look at the bottom, showing the treated water there, you'll notice that they're down to 0 after they go through. We cannot detect them in the treated water at all. So what were some of the take-home messages from this study? The one thing that was noted is that the Six Nations drinking water source, the Grand River that is, it continues to be contaminated by domestic wastewater and agricultural runoff upstream. And Fairchild Creek is contributing to that contamination. Although we found that quite a bit of the contamination was from human sources and bovine or cow sources, majority of the contamination appears to be from other warm-blooded animals. And that was not determined in this study as to which warm-blooded animals. The technologies in the new drinking water treatment plant are effective at removing both chemical and the microbiological contaminants that we looked at. And so the installation of the bacterial activated carbon filtration units in the drinking water treatment plant is key to providing good quality drinking water. And we need to understand all the current chemical and biological risks by having a broader risk analysis of both, not just the public drinking water source, but as well as the private ones, your wells and cisterns, etc., in order to develop more robust water management strategies. So what are some of the recommendations here? It is not so much what has to be changed within the community of Six Nations, but what can be changed upstream. So a recommendation is for political advocacy from community leaders to get municipalities upstream to make changes to reduce contaminants entering the drinking water intake. Further research to determine what other animals are contributing to fecal contamination of the Grand River upstream and the drinking water intake. Is it chicken? Is it hogs? Is it wild birds? So what exactly is the source? Another thing that I recommend would be to construct stormwater retention ponds to retain polluted runoff upstream, and create things like treatment wetlands to treat stormwater that's coming from upstream as well. The riparian zone, so like the zones between the river and the land should be restored in areas where they are no longer present, maybe by building or not building, sorry, like by planting trees and so on to prevent, or fencing in some areas to prevent animals from getting into water sources. Future studies, in order to get a more realistic representation of the exposure of community members to those contaminants, future studies should focus on a more extensive monitoring program for all sources of drinking water. So not for just the drinking water that goes through the treatment plant, excuse me, but for all sources of drinking water at the study location. In the Grand River watershed, sampling should be conducted in early spring and early summer in order to capture pesticide contamination when it is anticipated to be the highest. And for us to be able to assess the human health risks, we also need to consider that those pesticides and so on interact with each other, and they may be present in the water at the same time. And like I mentioned, I was only able to look at that much given my resources, time, etc. And to get the study didn't only look at those testing in the lab and collecting of the water samples, but we wanted multiple perspectives to get a more comprehensive picture of risks. And that is why we looked at qualitative findings. So what are the risks perceived by water experts in the community? For what risk do they perceive there are to drinking water provided by the treatment plant as well as other sources? And what are the factors that influence these perceived risks identified by the water experts? So we need to know the water experts, their perceptions of risk, because these are the people who are managing the risks, and their perceptions would determine the types of strategies that they would put in place to manage those risks, or what they would prioritize. So how do these factors influence the water management strategies that these experts would recommend? So how were perceived risks identified? There were interviews conducted, interviews with health professionals. So I spent a few days in the community and conducted some interviews with health professionals, water operators, and water managers. And I took all that data and analyzed it using the NVivo software that helps to analyze qualitative data. And what are some of the perceptions of risk? So people identified perceptions based on the source of the water, meaning where the water was coming from. Is the contamination known? Is it unknown? That would determine whether they thought there was a risk. Are there development pressures upstream? Is there land degradation upstream? All these things would determine whether there was a risk to the source. Is there commercial abstraction of groundwater upstream? Are the cisterns running out of water? So these issues were identified in terms of the quantity of water. So water experts saw quantity issues as some sort of risk. They looked at things like physical geology, meaning things related to springs and wells, whether the well water is hard, whether there's presence of gas pockets. All of these things were mentioned as risks. And also it was brought to my attention about, droughts or floods or reduced well water in the area as some of the risks to water or drinking water, those long-term climate related risks to drinking water for the community. Risks were identified based on storage and distribution, where the water is being stored and how it was getting to household. And these risks were particularly related to cisterns and wells. So concerns that cisterns and wells were not being maintained enough, and some people were still not connected to the drinking water treatment plant. So that was identified as a risk. Sometimes taste, smell, and appearance of water was identified as a risk. Sanitation of cisterns and the trucks, well husbandry was identified as risks, and some concerns were there that wells were not being adequately monitored on a household level. Again, risks were identified based on consumption, that is factors related directly to the drinking of the water. For example, belief structures, as some people gave me those terms during the interview. Some people over many generations never drink, for example, the tap water. It's something that's passed down from mother to grandmother to and so on, or grandparents, and that was seen as a risk. Socioeconomic factors, a risk to that, to drinking water was that there was competition from their wages for water operators were smaller when compared to larger cities. So there's a possibility of maybe losing some water operators to other cities. Cost to filling cisterns, the cost of installation and construction of wells, all these things would, determine what types of wells or how well maintained those things was, and that would constitute a risk to drinking water. Perceived quality, does people sometimes perceiving that bottled water is superior or safer than other sources, and that is not necessarily the case. So all of these were looked at as perceived risks. Policy and legislation, so policy and laws that relate to drinking water. Sometimes the policy underestimate risks, and one thing that I found was there's an intake protection zone, and sometimes that intake protection zone, according to the water experts, was not wide enough, and it excluded some important areas. And that was part, especially in, like, I think you're part of the Grand River. There's a source water protection plan for the Grand River, and the intake protection zone, it was believed, was a bit underestimated. So again, legislative barriers, you have things like some of all the water on the water trucks were not regulated, and that was seen as the risk. So what factors influence those perceptions that water experts have? Based on things they could directly see, the smell, the color, the taste of water, that directly visible environmental effects, they were able to see or experience things like chronic flooding, and so they knew about that. Beliefs, perceived superior quality of bottled water was largely due to generation beliefs, and I mentioned that before. Knowledge influenced perceptions of risk. For example, through a knowledge of the watershed, a participant illustrated using a map locations that potentially pose major risks to the river as a source of drinking water, and these locations were not part of the intake protection zone. And again, so political advocacy and so on would help with this. So we look at things like familiarity or experience with the risk, whether the person has, knows from their experience, for example, if their household was located on a deep sulfur bed, things like that. Perceptions of health and safety. When talking about, that was mentioned when talking about water coming off rooftops, into the eaves trough, etc., into the cisterns. There was concerns about that. And I just want to mention that perceived health and safety implications, they were identified in discussions with female participants only. And water managers, their belief about their ability to control those risks influence their perception. For example, they perceive that the treatment plant is able to handle a flux of contaminants or several contaminants and mitigate the impacts of drinking water of things like a spill upstream. So that confidence in the drinking water treatment plant is influencing their perception of risk. Socioeconomic factors, uncertainty of being able to retain trained and qualified operators due to inability to pay competitive wages, as I mentioned, and confidence in operations. And participants often spoke of confidence in the operational environment, for example, in the water treatment plant. So people were confident in the operations of that plant. And the strength of enforcement of regulations. For example, a lot of people do not get their wells installed, or wells are not installed or maintained properly. So the strength of enforcement of regulations influence risk. I had quite a few of them. Awareness of research findings. For example, one participant revealed that a study showed that several types of or kinds of pharmaceuticals were found in the Grand River, and that influenced people's perceptions of risk. Trust. People spoke about trust when they spoke about the tap water over the bottled water, or and a lot of people mentioned that they don't trust the water in the Grand River. But it's interesting because they trust the treatment plant and the technology that's in the treatment plant. Then you look at social networks. Perceived superior quality of bottled water within social or professional groups influence perceptions of risk. So how did the perceptions of risk influence what water management strategies were recommended? Because I asked, what water management strategies do you recommend? And most of the strategies recommended was soft path, which is a term that is used. Things that are not, when I say soft paths, not things like structures like building a new treatment plant or so on, more things like legislation, strengthening legislation and so on. You find a few hard path strategies were mentioned, especially as relates to private sources of drinking water, to have more treatment of those drinking water. So findings or the recommendations are generally consistent with a transformation in approach within water resource management, where people are saying, soft path approaches like education, legislative strengthening, and so on, even, things we should recommend more than building this or adding this structure to manage drinking water. Many of those strategies were to help protect against or reduce risk from water quality, as opposed to, that should be water quantity issues. So people saw risks to water quality as more than risks to water quantity, risk from water quantity. So what were some of the take-home messages? Experts believe that current water policies and strategies needed improvement, but they had a great level of trust for each other, but indicated that trust issues from the public created challenges for managing drinking water sources. Water operators, they trusted the treatment plant and had confidence in the plant being able to treat all contaminants originating from the Grand River. And gendered roles, such as the role of preparing meals for the family, generally make women more aware about risks to human health caused by issues with drinking water sources. So these were my findings here. And what were the next steps? And so that's where I asked for permission to publish the findings of this study. And I asked specific question, can I identify 6 nations of the Grand River, First Nation community as a partner in the study by the name? Can I identify the specific location of the study in the publication? And can I acknowledge the community members who helped with the study in the publication as well? So at this point, I just want to thank everybody, both partners, friends who took care of me while I spent time at Six Nations, persons who took part in the interview, my supervisory committee at Trent, and funding agencies and labs, etc. So, and I thank you for taking time to listen to my presentation this evening.
Okay, thank you. Excuse me. Thank you so much, Marcia. Again, whenever we get these presentations, it's always quite informative. I think it's a lot of the things we've already known a lot of our lives growing up here on territory. So it's always nice to have some expert data backing up, what we've lived through all of our lives, and trying our best to make sure that we can make improvements. And I do appreciate your work, and again, to everybody who was a part of this as well. I know there's many other studies. I think we got to look at the bigger picture strategy of things, in which our council has been discussing for quite some time, in terms of what are those next best steps, as you've mentioned in some of your slides as well. But it's also nice, always really nice to see the data. I think that's something that we've always we kind of had challenges with in getting that necessary data in order for us to make those next informed decisions. And really, when you talk about the political advocacy piece, I know like those are some of the things that kind of stood out as I was making notes here, in terms of the legislative changes. Some of the things that we could do in the now, as opposed to which we know are quite long-term to short-term and so forth. So again, do appreciate you and your work, and for coming within the territory to do this work. And at this point in time, I'll look to open the floor for any further questions or comments. Again, it was quite informative. There was a lot to take in. So I'm sure our council. I see Councillor Audrey has her hand raised. I'll begin with her.
Thank you. I want to ask a question on the high incidence of different bacteria and all the things that could harm us. How do we go about researching and finding who are the biggest polluters of the Grand River by identifying before and after where their town or the municipality is? And I guess that would really help us out with trying to find out and meet with those municipalities to share our concerns and to try and get some kind of work done with our infrastructure committee, our environmental committee. And I think that education about how to treat your well and how to clean your cistern is education that needs to be taught to people on Six Nations. And the other question I have is, who were your experts that you speak of in your take-home message? And the terms of reference that you did when you went to our ethics committee, did you have in there the asking for using our name and crediting people, et cetera, and having us as partners? Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Audrey. I'll try to remember them in that order. So in determining what are some of the sources of pollution upstream, a good place to start would be to talk to members in the community, because I found a lot of information. Even people were able to draw maps and show points of pollution that were missed in putting together that intake protection zone. So people within the community know the area quite well, and they have that knowledge of areas that, that are problematic. Because I mentioned as well that at the meeting, I came with my supervisor to the meeting when he was presenting some results, and then came up the point that Fairchild Creek is one of the places that was of concern. And then we realized that Fairchild Creek is feeding a lot of bacteria into the Grand River as well. So I think starting by talking to people in the community, that would help as well. Another thing is doing source tracking. So with us, we tracked like the human sources, the cows and so on. source tracking can help, because if you're finding a lot of pollution, bacteria from cows, then it can help you investigate where those cattle, where are those cattle farms and so on. So maybe some additional source tracking of the bacteria can help. You mentioned education about educating people in terms of cleaning wells and so on. You were asking, or were you telling me that you think?
Yeah, just a statement. Education should be taught on Six Nations.
Yes,
How to treat their
education.
systems, how to clean them, and how to take care of their wells.
Yeah, I just really quickly, I wanted to just touch because I know Audrey, you touched on a key point in terms of some of the work that's been happening in terms of the Environment Task Force, which is led by Councillor Wright. I just maybe if I can just want to check in and touch base with him on just some of the activities that the task force has been contemplating and discussing and looking to kind of the next steps, because it's important. We were just having a little side conversation as well as the CRECs here on territory. I think that's an important piece to all of this when we talk about the bigger picture of things. So maybe if I can just check in with Councillor Nathan.
Thanks, Chief. Yeah, and good question, Audrey. I think a lot of the work as we translate this particular piece of research, because Rod's very, very on top of all research that's happening here on Six Nations, probably more so than the ethics committee. And the work that he's kind of contemplating as we stream into the environment also fills in a lot of this work, and it's picking up on the need to do that advocacy and legislation for the source water protection. And that work's been going on for, ever since I was started at Chiefs of Ontario in the early 2000s. So that work's going to continue. And it's really about expanding the intake protection zones, if I'm going to get technical on that. And I think you picked it up, Marcia, on your research to kind of look at that advocacy and how best we could go on that. Also, when you talked a bit about the public education, I know Rod's already doing some work with our comms department to kind of filter out what needs to go out next. And definitely how to treat your own well is one of them. And in fact, I think I just had a verbal conversation where he's done a few, gone right on site and helped community members just to understand that you just need the tiniest little bit of something like bleach or Javex to put in there to kind of help clean it, or even some alternative methods if they don't like going the chemical route. So he has done some on site, and we're looking to get that public education out. But definitely this work doesn't go, it doesn't stop here. It's actually going to continue with the environment group, and Rod's very much on top of some of the particulars going forward.
Yes, and Rod knows this study very well as well, because he was one of the persons who was quite helpful and involved. Yeah, and something you asked about was the water experts. Who did I mean when I mentioned water experts? I call them water experts. So because it's interviews and confidential, I can't really say, but just persons who've worked in some capacity or to do with water resources in the area, but not necessarily at the treatment plant. They may have worked in any capacity to do with water. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Marcia, for that. And again, thank you, Nathan, for your comments as well. I do see Helen has her hand raised.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that, back in the day, the old folk, my dad used to clean our cistern every year. I know how to clean cisterns. But Fairchild Creek has been I don't know what you want to call it, for as long as I can remember, full of contaminants. Bradford's always, they tried to do a little bit. When people start getting up in arms, they'll try and do something about it, and then they forget about it, and then it comes back and they forget about it. So that's really, to me, a political thing that we would need to get in on is, getting after Brantford about the Fairchild Creek even as a starting point. So it's really been contentious, that creek, for a long time. So I found your study very interesting. I've gotten into, I drink my tap water out of the Grand River. I'm still here. Don't know how sane I am, but I'm still here. I've gotten into discussions with people before about the drinking water. And I say to them, where do you think you're drinking? If you're buying Nestle's water, which is most of the water, the Dasani and all those different waters are all Nestle's. If you're drinking Nestle's water, it's coming out of the Grand River. So I don't know why people think out of bottled water's got more quality than tap water, but that's what they're drinking. Most of the bottled water is coming out of the Grand River. So it's always been there. And there's a lot of people that won't drink our tap water because I think you mentioned it early on, there's a trust issue with anything to do with water. But I think our water treatment plant is doing very well. And I trust what they're doing with our water. I wish everyone else would. So I really enjoyed this presentation because it's really hitting home for all of us here. Water, they've done a lot of studies and different things on our water over the years. And, but, I just wish people would put more faith in our water treatment plant. And you're right, learn how to clean your cisterns and learn how to clean your wells and things like that. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you.
Thanks, Helen, for your comments. And I think just in addition to our water treatment plant, but it's also our operators. I think a lot of the times they go undervalued. I think when it comes to community-wide, they're one of the most valued people in our community is our operators of that plant. They do a lot of work 24/7 around the clock. So I always have to commend and give them acknowledgement because that work isn't easy. Maintaining and doing that work at the treatment plant itself. And it's only been maintained by one guy for quite some time. And so, for him, his commitment to this community over the years is just, it's just amazing. So again, Marcia, sorry, I see Greg has his hand raised. I know he was having some technical issues.
Is it working now?
Oh, sorry, Greg. You have to come over here. Sorry, if you could just bear with us.
That's okay.
Oh, hi, Marcia.
Hi, Greg.
Yeah, nice study. The question I had was, what journal is this going to be published in?
I do not know as yet. I have one, I have a few in mind because, it's sometimes you have to write to the journal, and if they decide to, if they accept your study, then they would publish it. One similar to this.
I think it would be important that it does get published, and then we can use it further. Like the take-home message that I think Helen's brought up and Audrey is that the contaminants that we're getting coming to the reserve are coming from upstream and from Fairchild Creek. That's a good point. That's what we can use further. The other thing is that even with help, maybe even government assistance for our community to help us clean our cisterns and our wells, because your study points out or recommends that. And I was just trying to glean a couple of take-home messages from your study, and that once published, then it's it's out there. It's out into the scientific world. And then, and we can use that further, but it was a nice study. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sure. Yes, I have a few journals in mind, like I said, but I can't name them because I don't know which one will accept. And just to make a statement quickly, I spent some time at the treatment plant with Steve and the other guys there, and I learned so much from them. Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was such so heartwarming watching them do what they do.
It's amazing to hear. Thank you so much, Marcia, and do apologize. I know Greg's, we're experiencing some technical difficulties, so
That's okay.
do apologize for that. Okay, it's been, again, a very informative, very good study. Again, we want to thank you, and as well as you see on the screen, all of the partners and individuals who've been a part of this work. This is just very preliminary. There's a lot more steps to get to the end goal here, so I know there's a lot more that we have to do. So with that being said, I know there's a recommendation on the agenda, again, that will approve yourself and your presentation and request the permission to use our community's name in the publication. That again will be written from your PhD thesis, quotation risks in the development of water management strategies. So that has been moved by Councillor Nathan. Is there a seconder? Second by Michelle, Councillor Michelle. Is there any further questions or comments? Again, this will then approve your one slide on the 3 question marks, Marshall, so that will suffice once approved and voted on. That being said, I don't see any further questions or comments. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. I'm going to request at this point to do a second reading waive. Is there a mover and seconder to that effect? Moved by Nathan, seconded by Michelle, to waive second reading on the previous motion. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Okay, Marcia, well, again, thank you for such an informative evening. And again, do appreciate the work in yourself coming to our community. I'm glad that you had a heartwarming time visiting Six Nations. I'm sure it's not going to be the last. We could use more of Marcia's and all those on the screen as well for this work. So again, do appreciate your work and wish you all the best in your next steps.
Thank you so much, Mac, and thank you to everybody. Yeah.
Thank you as well. Have a great evening.
Okay.
Take care.
You too. Bye-bye. Thanks.
Okay, Council, we're going to continue moving along. That does complete our delegation portion of this evening's agenda. That'll lead us into our next item, which is the adoption of the General Council minutes of September 27th. So, everybody awake? Yeah, moved by Helen, second by Sherry Lynn. Are there any further questions, comments? Okay, seeing or hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. We do have a number of scheduling motions, so I'm just going to continue to go right down the list here. Recommendation 6.1, again, is for myself to approve for tomorrow an event featuring Phil Fontaine and other Indigenous leaders, which is how to accelerate sustainable economic reconciliation in Canada. That's going to be hosted in London, which I will be a part of. Looking for a mover and seconder. Moved by Sherry Lynn, seconder. Second by Greg. Are there any further questions, comments? Yes, there's an option for virtual as well. Seeing or hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. I'm going to wait to hold off on second reading until all of the recommendations. So the second recommendation I have is again for myself and any other councillor as well to attend with me at the Royal Chapel of the Mohawks on October 23rd at 2 p.m. again to bring welcoming remarks during the commemoration ceremony honoring the late Queen Elizabeth. Is there anyone who have interest to attend? Again, it's pretty open. It's not too far of a travel. Okay, seeing or hearing now, look to a mover and seconder. Moved by Audrey, seconder.
I'll second.
Second by Carrie. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. And again, that is open for any counselors if your schedules do permit. The next one I have is in relation, was an in-camera item moved into open, which is to our counselor Sherry Lynn to attend the Indian Gaming Association seminar, which is the master's class, October 19th through the 21st in Las Vegas, Nevada, which is hosted by the Indian Gaming Association. And as well as all of the expenses will be covered by the Six Nations Gaming Commission. Oh, sorry, December. Oh, sorry, it's December 7th through the 9th. As our mover moved by Nathan, second by Michelle. Are there any further questions, comments? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Just also some upcoming meetings for, I believe, Councillor Helen in relation to the Child and Family Services of Grand Erie. I don't think there's no necessary recommendation or rather motion required, but just as a FYI, October 17th is the Finance and Audit Risk Committee meeting through to the 21st and 22nd, which is the board retreat in Townsend. Moving into the 25th of October, which is Governance and Nominations Committee meeting, which is located in Brantford, and as well as on the 27th, the regular board meeting at the Family Resource Center. Helen? Oh, sorry, Helen, you're on mute.
Those are there because I was confused when Jill was asking for all the committees that we attended. I wasn't intending for these kind of little committees to be getting under scheduling. Because to me, scheduling is when you're going someplace where you don't normally go, like,
Right. Yeah.
you know, like travel.
When you need a motion, right?
Yeah, I don't know why they put them on there. I didn't ask them to do that, but I was just letting them know all the committees that I have to attend because they were asking for a list of our committees. So
Okay, sorry, maybe we'll just go to clarification. Again, it's always just good for FYIs as well. Tammy, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, so it's part of the reason why that was added to the in-camera is because we wanted to have a larger discussion with regard to those and the schedule, not scheduling, but availability of counselors. So part of that just demonstrates a number of meetings that we wouldn't have known Helen was attending if we hadn't been provided with the information. So it's just part of a larger discussion.
That makes sense because I know we do have other items to be scheduled, and I think that's what we're trying to get to see where different counselors were, because I know there's some big mandatory sessions that we want to make sure all of council is available.
well, can I make a comment, Mark?
Sure.
My
Helen?
feeling is, my thinking is council business comes first before any external committee.
Right.
If we have a council, if we're going to set up a council meeting and somebody says, oh, I got to go to this committee or that committee, to me, council comes first. So whenever council schedules those dates that Tammy has mentioned, if council calls a meeting on those dates, I tell the CS I'm not coming because I have to go to a council meeting. So to me, council comes first before anything. And I think that's how it should be for everyone. I don't know how many times we get people sending the email saying, I can't attend because I got this committee meeting or I got that committee meeting. And to me, the council business is first. We're councilors.
I agree, that makes sense, and we'll have a further discussion on that piece. But again, do appreciate you sending in your upcoming meetings. Again, I know each counselor is quite busy, so it's nice to see, where everybody is.
It's only one of my committees. I got some more. All those meetings, only one committee for the month.
Exactly. Yes. Okay, well, thanks for that, Helen. Again, we have moved on our motions for the upcoming scheduling, so I'll look to a second reading waive on the 3 previous travel motions. Is there a mover and seconder to that? Moved by Nathan, seconder. seconder to waive second reading, second by Michelle. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Okay, that does complete our agenda for this evening. And as well, again, just want to say thank you to each of you for joining in on our presentations. We had a number of presentations, and so it was a very informative evening. With that being said, I will look to a motion to adjourn. Moved by Sherry Lynn. Seconder, second by Michelle. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing or hearing none, motion is carried. Thank you to everybody for joining us this evening. I hope you have a great evening.